Everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today here on the channel, we're going to be continuing our Christopher Nolan 4K Blu Ray reviews, and this time we're up to a pretty damn big movie, 2008's The Dark Knight. This is the sequel to 2005's Batman Begins, and 2008 was a huge deal for superhero films. This is the year when superhero films were finally going to be taken seriously and be taken to the next level. Not only did we get Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, but we also got the first film in the MCU in Iron Man. So the summer of 08, if you were a superhero film fan, you were eating good. And for me at the time, this movie was a huge deal. I give The Dark Knight a lot of credit for my film fandom. You know, I was always a big Batman fan, and I kind of lost my love of Batman leading up to Batman Begins. You know, we had 8 years of no Batman. When Batman and Robin came out in 1997, I was 5 years old. I was 13 years old in 2005 with Batman Begins. I didn't even see it in theaters. But after I finally saw Batman Begins on DVD and they hinted at the Joker for The Dark Knight, not only did I get super excited, but plenty of other people around my age, and really just a bunch of cinephiles, all got interested in seeing what Christopher Nolan was gonna do next, because Christopher Nolan added a level of realism to these films. You know, in his Dark Knight trilogy, these movies are operating in the real world, so they're very different from the cartoony superhero films we had in the 2000s, and they are just so well made, so well written, so well scored. That these are those special kind of superhero films. The Dark Knight's legacy is huge. The impact it left not only on superhero films, but on the film industry in general cannot be matched. First of all, when it comes to people like me, like I was saying, I was always a big movie fan, but the build up to this movie, I just remember me and two of my friends, we had the same computer graphics class, and just from January all the way through the end of the school year, we would watch the Dark Knight trailer, look up Dark Knight news every single day, just anticipating this film. We also looked up a lot of trailers for Step Brothers as well. That was another big movie we're looking forward to in the summer of 2008, but the anticipation for The Dark Knight could just not be matched. And it wasn't just us. Everybody was looking forward to The Dark Knight, trying to look for pictures from on set. There was this image where we saw a blurry version of Heath Ledger's Joker makeup, and we could just see the IMAX camera, because this is a big deal too, was the IMAX camera. It had never really been used in a film before. Up to this point, IMAX was really just used for shooting nature videos that you would see at like an aquarium if they had an IMAX theater, or for shooting the NASCAR IMAX film. That's what IMAX cameras were used for. It was never used to shoot a film, and it's not even used in this film to shoot the entire film, but certain scenes were used with the IMAX cameras, which was a huge deal at the time. I even remember them reporting that Christopher Nolan broke one of them, because they're these huge rigs, and I remember just looking into that and being like, what are these scenes gonna look like? We just could not wait, to the point when the date finally rolled up. We went to the midnight release at the time when midnight releases were a big deal. You actually had to see the movie at midnight, because the films did come out on Friday. Now they come out on Thursdays. I don't care what anyone says. They're not still released on Fridays. They're released on Thursdays. You have like 4 movie times. Now, back in the day, you had to see it at midnight, because that was the release date. I went at midnight and saw it. Absolutely loved the film. Went back the next morning with my family at 10 in the morning, because they were just playing this movie on a constant loop when this first came out, because again, the anticipation could not be matched. My entire family went and saw this movie. Even people who aren't film fans, they had to see The Dark Knight. We all went as a family to see this one. It was a big deal, so we saw it again at 10 in the morning, and then I went back with another group of friends that night. So the opening day for The Dark Knight, I saw the movie 3 times. I ended up seeing the film 9 times in theaters, and when it got its 2018 re-release in theaters for its 10-year anniversary, I got my 10th time in theaters, and I'm pretty proud of that. And The Dark Knight's legacy is just huge. Not only did Heath Ledger's Joker become one of the most iconic characters in film history.
You know where Harvey is? You know who he is?
But he also won a Best Supporting Actor award after he had already passed away, which is another thing that the legacy of this film leaves behind, is Heath Ledger's Joker and this great performance that he gives in this film. He steals the film out from under Christian Bale's Batman. This really is his story, and this film also doesn't really feel like a true superhero film. It feels like a crime film. You open it up with an amazing heist scene that only can be matched by Michael Mann's Heat heist scene, and you can see the inspiration for that in this film, you know, shooting that with IMAX cameras, the beautiful looking Chicago cityscape, and just going through that with that amazing Hans Zimmer score, the amazing lighting, and then the rest of the film, it just played out so well. And I just thought that this movie was a 10 out of 10 masterpiece for a long time. This was my favorite Batman film, and that's why it hurts me a little bit to say 16 years later, The Dark Knight doesn't resonate as much with me as it did back then. And even for the few years after it came out, there was just so many conversations about The Dark Knight building up to The Dark Knight Rises, because it's the sequel to the greatest superhero film ever. And then as years have gone on, and the more I've revisited this film, I've probably seen The Dark Knight, honestly, about 100 times. It's honestly disgusting. When it came to Blu-ray, I just watched that Blu-ray all the time. I was obsessed with this film, and maybe I burnt myself out on it, but I just have felt like over the last few years, the more movies I've watched, the bigger cinephile I've become, I've just noticed there's more flaws in this film than I had actually realized. You can poke holes in there. It's not quite Swiss cheese, but there are some points in this story where it kind of becomes a little bit too preachy. For me, I really don't like the ferry sequence at the end. The message is great, you know, showing that humanity at the end of the day, they won't pull the trigger and kill other people, because how do you live with that? I love the message of that, but the problem is that Batman delivers such exposition of it to the Joker, and the Joker is this menace of a human being who just wants to create chaos. It just feels like a big step down from their chase scene in the tunnels of Gotham City with the trucks and the armored cars, and we get that big reveal that Gordon didn't actually die. Like, that felt like the climax of this film. It kind of feels like a hosh-posh of let's slam two movies together. Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face is great in this movie, but his storyline and his arc just escalates way too fast. He goes from the beginning of this movie, Gotham's White Knight, a hero figure. This would have played out great in this movie if they would have just let him be Harvey Dent throughout this entire film and then saved the Two-Face character for The Dark Knight Rises. But Christopher Nolan at the time didn't think he was going to make a third film, so he wanted to get everything into this film. But the Two-Face storyline definitely feels shoehorned in. It feels like it goes in there too fast. Regarding from the beginning of this movie, this guy wanted to put away every single criminal in the city till he's eventually going to kill kids at the end of this movie. It just does not make sense how we escalate from the beginning of this film with his character to the very end of the film with his character. Although I would have preferred they close out with him, Gordon, and Batman and find a way to put the Joker into that sequence than having the Joker do his own thing with the ferry sequence. I just feel like they don't really mesh well together. I mean, Batman has to show up in both areas, and it kind of underplays at the very end both sequences because they feel like they're in different movies. But the film does close out perfectly with that great Gary Oldman monologue.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight.
I just absolutely love that. So the movie does send you home happy, and don't get me wrong, this movie is still a masterpiece. It's still one of the greatest superhero films of all time. The legacy of this film cannot be matched by many, but for me, as the years have gone on, I don't think that this is a perfect Batman film. It's still a top 5 Batman film of all time. It is still an incredibly well-written, well-made Batman film, and it has one of those most iconic scores from Hans Zimmer that not many scores can be matched as far as being iconic as well. So The Dark Knight is one of those special films that every cinephile has to see, even if you're not a fan of superhero movies. This is one of the important films. Academy Awards actually had to change their rules because people were so upset that in 2008, this didn't get a Best Picture nomination. In my opinion, it should have won Best Picture in 2008. It was ripped off because we didn't acknowledge that superhero films can be this good. This is more than a superhero film. This is a great movie, should have been nominated to the point now that the Academy Award has 10 films that they nominated, and honestly, you shouldn't have even had to do that. 10 films is great. We should be showing more love to more films, but you know what? The Dark Knight should have been able to slip into those 5 films that year. It really is one of those important movies. But anyway, guys, let's move on to the 4K Blu-ray review for The Dark Knight. So I have the Dark Knight trilogy here on 4K Blu-ray. I also have the previously released Blu-ray edition of the Dark Knight trilogy, and before that I had the Dark Knight trilogy on DVD, but before that I actually had the Dark Knight when it first came out on Blu-ray, and that Blu-ray was a big deal. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when that movie came out on Blu-ray in 2008, it had that lenticular lens cover, and people were making a huge deal about it. I remember the big thing that everyone was talking about was in the opening sequence, in the heist sequence, when the Joker attaches that smoke grenade into the banker's mouth, and we see the purple string going all the way up to the bus. You know, you couldn't notice that on the DVD, but once we jumped to Blu-ray, you saw that purple string the entire way. So The Dark Knight is a very, very landmark film in the world of physical media as well. This is what sold me on Blu-ray, because at that point, I hadn't started collecting Blu-rays in 2008. You know, Blu-ray had been around since 2006, mainly because of the PlayStation 3. That was the selling point of the PS3 for a lot of people was, hey, you get a Blu-ray player. And that's really what killed HD DVD, was the fact that you had a Blu-ray player included with the PlayStation 3, whereas the Xbox 360 only had a DVD player, but then they came out with an HD DVD attachment for their Xbox 360, but it was separate from it, and you had to buy it separately, and I think it was like over $100. So HD DVD just had no shot against Blu-ray with them including it in the PS3, and then for a lot of people like myself, this is what sold us on Blu-ray. We had to get a PlayStation 3 so we could watch The Dark Knight on Blu-ray. So for me, this was actually my first Blu-ray when it came out. I ended up actually selling the initial run of Blu-rays because at the time they were expensive. I wasn't into collecting movies yet. I actually would be turning 18 not too long after that, moving out of my house. And, you know, for a little while I didn't collect physical media. But then when I did start collecting physical media again, right around the time when The Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012, that's really when I started building the collection that I have now. And the first Blu-rays that I bought were the Terminator collection, of course, The Dark Knight, and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. But then eventually when 4K Blu-ray came out and they announced that Christopher Nolan's movies up to that point were all going to be coming to 4K Blu-ray, I immediately pre-ordered this on 4K. These weren't my first 4Ks. These actually came out about 6 or 7 months after I started collecting 4Ks, but I had to have them just because of the Blu-ray alone. I was like, if the Blu-ray looks that good, the 4K is going to look that good as well. So we come inside and we grab The Dark Knight. When you come inside this one, this is actually a 3-disc set. You get your regular old 4K Blu-ray over here. Over here you get your Blu-ray, and underneath that you get your special features Blu-ray. But that special features Blu-ray doesn't include all the special features. The rest of them are actually on the special features section of the Blu-ray release, which is really cool because they break down every single scene, you know, all the big scenes in the film on the Blu-ray. It's awesome. Christopher Nolan pretty much does it all. There's so many pictures and everything, and you think that would be enough. I was like, oh man, you know, if they just had these special features, that's plenty. But when you get to the actual special features disc, there are so many cool things in here, really leaning into the power of this movie and how Christopher Nolan really has always appreciated physical media because they break everything down. And not only do they break everything down as far as the sequences in the film, you know, the psychology of Batman and his tools and everything like that, but there is also 6 episodes of Gotham City Tonight, which is basically a news network that we see kind of in throughout the film, but it's really building up to The Dark Knight. Anthony Michael Hall actually plays one of the news anchors, and you know, you see him throughout the film, but this, you know, he really is playing a news anchor and everybody's playing along. They're all playing characters who live in Gotham City, talking about Harvey Dent becoming the new district attorney. You have an interview with the old district attorney before him, really building up the anticipation to The Dark Knight, but to include all of those on the disc, that is awesome. The special features are great. Now, it's been 16 years since The Dark Knight. I would love a brand new making of documentary, looking back on the film, looking back on the legacy of Heath Ledger. You know, these special features have been around since 2008. It would be cool to really add on top of them, but I can't complain about them because there are so many of them. It's just, it would be really nice now to look back on it at the legacy of The Dark Knight. It'd just be a lot of fun, and I think we'll get that eventually, maybe for its 20th anniversary in a few years. That would be my best guess because it is a very important film, and 20 years later, it's crazy to think that this movie came out 16 years ago. It really still blows my mind. But anyway, as far as the audio goes, you get a DTS HD 5.1. It's a remixed version of the previously released Blu-ray, and again, that audio track on the Blu-ray was a big deal at the time, mainly because, hey, we're talking about Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan always uses high-end audio. You know, he really makes great use of the bass. You know, have the Hans Zimmer score playing throughout the entire film, and that original audio track was great. Now, it is an upgrade to this, and it is a bombastic, bumpin' DTS HD 5.1 mix of this. I mean, it is fantastic. For some reason, we've said this before, and we'll say it again, Christopher Nolan does not use Dolby Atmos tracks, so the DTS HD 5.1 seems to be his sweet spot. That's what he likes to do. That's how he likes to mix his audio. We actually have we don't have the problem here we would have in movies like Tenet, where the dialogue is mixed much lower than the background sound effects or the score itself. No, the dialogue comes in crisp and clear here, and it is a fantastic DTS HD 5.1. Is it the greatest one? No, but it's still a really, really good one. Now, the visuals, these are the things that haven't aged that well. Just like Batman Begins, this came out in 2017 in the early days of 4K Blu-ray. We've come almost 7 years since then. Technology has gotten so much better, and for the most part, this is a fantastic 4K Blu-ray visually. It's just not a flawless one. It's still better than Batman Begins. A lot of that is due to the IMAX sequences in this 4K Blu-ray, which look absolutely stunning, and they break down the differences of IMAX and film in here. So if you have actually never seen the difference between what IMAX film looks like and what regular film looks like, and the reason why IMAX film looks so much better and the resolution increases so much when we go to IMAX, you could actually find all that stuff out in the extras as well, and it really is fascinating. IMAX really does blow me away, and you know, this was Christopher Nolan the first time he ever used it, so we don't get that many IMAX sequences in here, but the ones we do get all still look incredible. It's just very jarring when we go back down to, you know, the regular old-fashioned 4K, and we go back to the regular old-fashioned aspect ratio where we get the black bars on the top and bottom. When you jump from an IMAX sequence to that, your eyes have to readjust, and you notice the resolution decreases. And another thing that's kind of flawed with this one, and it was very similar with the Batman Begins, but we're switching out that burnt orange look for the blue look. A lot of these scenes have like this blue look to them, and it can drain out the skin a little bit, which kind of bothers me. And there are other sequences when the skin just looks a little bit unnatural. It looks like just too dark, and you would have wanted to add just a little bit more color to it, and it would have actually made it look a little bit more natural. So it's still a big jump from the previously released Blu-ray, which again was a great Blu-ray. But I think that this 4K Blu-ray, like Batman Begins, is really starting to show its age, and it would be really cool if we could get a brand new scan of this. Obviously, we won't get it with Dolby Vision. This is a Warner Brothers release, and they only use HDR10, so we won't get that. But it would just be really cool to run it through one more time and really just enhance that stuff with the new technology. But overall, it really still is a great 4K Blu-ray, one that you should have in your collection, mainly because it is The Dark Knight. It is one of those important films, and even besides that, it's a great disc, and they give you so many extras. They give you a great audio track, they give you great visuals. So by chance, if you don't have this in your collection, it goes on sale a lot. I can highly recommend you grab this one. Grab the entire trilogy because they're all 4K Blu-rays. We'll get to The Dark Knight Rises pretty soon. Our next one will be Inception. But how would I rate this 4K Blu-ray now in 2024? I would give The Dark Knight 4K pretty damn solid 9 out of 10. But there is room to get this 4K to a 10 out of 10, and I hope to see that pretty damn soon. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for me for another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you enjoyed this one, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video, or you can even become a channel member if you want to support this channel financially. We have 3 different tiers: friends of the channel, the producers tier, where you're going to find people like Mr. Smelly Potato, John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, and Nocturnal. Or you can even become a director like Frank's Media and Reviews and have your own choice review each and every single month. And there's also plenty of other perks that you can find in the description below as well. But if you got no money to toss our way, don't you guys worry about it. The best way to keep supporting this channel is just by getting out in those streets and telling your friends about us. And then after you're done doing all that, we'll be seeing you around.